Hello, we're at the Precious Metals Summit in Zurich, and I'm with Ian Harris, the CEO of Outcrop Silver and Gold. Ian, fancy seeing you again, twice in a week.
Yeah. We've decided to go across the other side of the planet to see each other again, I guess.
Exactly. Look, for those, obviously a lot of people won't be aware of this, we were on site, you were gracious enough to invite us. Misconceptions going in, the first time in Colombia, lots of misconceptions as to what Colombia is and what it's like. Actually, half tempted to move there myself, to be honest. I'm not surprised you live there. Look, why don't we just introduce the story to begin with, and then we'll go into a bit more about what I personally perceive to be going on site and some of the things that we spoke about while we were there.
That sounds great. So, I'll give the elevator, the introduction. Outcrop Silver, our flagship project is Santa Ana, which is in Tolima, Colombia. And it's one of the few, because there are very few, true primary silver and high-grade projects. Actually, one of the highest-grade silver projects in the world, and we're currently got 2 drills turning, working on demonstrating a pathway of how the existing resource can grow dramatically.
Nice. Okay. All right. So set the scene here. It's now been, I sort of know. We flew into Bogota. We then literally you're in the air for about 20 minutes flying down to Ibagué, and then it's a pretty easy, well-infrastructure road, good infrastructure around there. Short drive down to Falan, which is the area that you guys are sort of not only building a mine, but sort of improving the community there. It's quite nice to see. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about the geology, because it's basically sulfide material, how that, just give people the scene as to where these pods are as in, because they're about 5 million ounces, 8 million ounces per pod, right? So just set the scene as to how this ore body looks, because that will dive me into my next question.
Sure. So if you think about the overall trend, you are up in the north in Falan, and the resource is actually closest to Falan, but it's in the titled area. It's about 17 kilometers overall of vein systems.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this corridor, there's multiple veins, right? That were created under tension. So they run through this trend, and then so each individual vein. Also, as you noted, that every time we have can convert a vein to resource, or the ore shoot is actually what we're looking for. It adds a significant amount of ounces. Our overall resource, which today is about 37 million ounces, each one of the veins contributes a good portion of them. So I also like rule of thumbs, the way you approach it and saw it, is each one you add, you're adding about 5 million ounces. But all of our resources in the upper northeast section of that trend. So this year is about driving down and testing throughout to prove or show up that we continue to see high-grade silver mineralization throughout the trend. So each one of the veins, it's hosted in quartz. And then you see a really interesting mineralogy. Sometimes you see some sulfides, et cetera. But when we see argentite, that is a silver sulfide. That is what we're really looking for. It's those little black dots. And actually, before Guillermo showed up, he joked and said they used to call it the black sulfides, but it was actually silver, Right. So it was an actual silver. And I remember the discovery core that we were looking at, right? They weren't very excited about it because they're like, oh, what is this? It doesn't look like anything. Maybe they were looking for gold. I don't know what back that far in history. But it was really, when you hit that argentite, you're hitting, it's by itself very high-grade silver, and when you see that, you know that you're in a very, very solid system.
One of the things I really wanted to find out through my own experience on site was, you've got, like we said, you've got a number of these now. How many systems have you found? How many?
Well, in the resource, there's 7, 9. We've hit another 4. Maybe 5, and hopefully I don't blow a upcoming press release. But we're having a total about 14 that now have been in a block, right? 7 of them have been included in the resource, but obviously we're trying to add as many as possible, so we know the pathway of how we're going to be increasing the resource.
But say exactly. There's a clear pathway, right? But say you've got 14. What I personally, because for me it's like, okay, 5 million per one. You need 20 to get to 100 million. That's simple, right? But what I did discover while you're on, so you've only really drilled down, 250 meters on each of these pods. I mean, the current estimation from some of the guys on site was that potentially these systems go down 400, 600, 800 meters. why not just do 50% more and deeper drilling on the existing pods, the 14, 15 or so that you already have, and then that gets you to your 100 million without having to find 5 new pods. That's what I couldn't really get my head around. Why not really drill out and go after the ones that you know are there rather than the greenfield?
So there's 2 major reasons.
Yeah.
One of the bigger ones is you want to be able to demonstrate the potential of the entire trend, right? If we're thinking in terms of a larger silver company or demonstrating our upside potential, you want to be able to demonstrate that there's continuation on the trend. Although we do normally do projects around a 10-year time frame to say how much can we mine out in 10 years, you really were hoping that something is a little bit more generational. So that's the big part of it, right? It's also why we have the internal goal of what is the easiest way, what is the most efficient way that we can get to 100 million ounces, right? Because that for us is a good number to say, okay, now we have enough of a resource, doesn't mean it's the total resource,
Yep.
to start building out a project of scale that gives enough oomph in market. And so the other thing, and the reason why this year was so focused on test out a target, get it enough where you know, okay, we're good, we know we can come back and do it, go to the next, and that's why we've seen throughout this year multiple discovery holes on these individual veins. A little bit more drilling, and we're moving off. And we're actually getting, well, I won't get too far ahead of myself, but now making to the move all the way down to the very south, which we're very excited about. Okay. And in this, we actually create, it's pretty straightforward spreadsheet. We have the individual veins. Mm-hmm. We know their average width, their average strike, their average grade, and our average success rate at hitting it. And that comes up with a number when we say, okay, if you drill it down so far, how many ounces do I get for every meter I drill?
Yeah.
Okay. And so as you think when you're drilling into a vein, if you're down 200 meters, you go down 400 meters, it's twice the meterage to really create the same amount of ounces.
Yeah.
And so our goal is by the end of this year, we basically go, this one's going to cost me 40 cents per ounce, these ones 20 cents per ounce, these ones 50, and drilling deeper happens to be much more expensive because I want to make sure we have a plan where we are raising X amount of capital. I know my valuation in market. I know how much I'm getting valued over $1, much more over $1 per ounce in the ground, right? So I want to make sure that when I'm drilling and creating additional ounces, I'm doing it and our internal hurdle is 50 cents or less. So that is the purpose of it. It's also like these holes we're drilling this year don't count towards the newer resource, right? But at the end of the day, we want to be adding resources as cheaply as possible. And going deeper, normally there's a lack of cost benefit, right?
Yep.
And that is the other reason why. So to be as efficient as possible and our usage of capital to create the most amount of value.
Okay, all right. So return on investment and also showing the scale of the prize.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, look, that actually makes a lot of sense, thank you. One of the other areas I was very interested in was, I guess, the mining method that you potentially might be using, right? Because like I said, these are fairly narrow veined, very high grade. But what I love about them is the continuity. It's not like the West Red Lake or the Red Lake camp where you've got these very high grade shoots, but they're firing off in all different directions. You've got to do sort of 50 centimeter, 1 meter spacing to drill and really find out where all these different veins are. You've got a one cohesive vein, looks fairly straightforward. But what would be the mining method there? Would it just be long hole, open stoping? What would you be doing?
First of all, yes, it would be just standard stoping for the majority. Yeah. I don't even think we would, although it might be possible, something like a shrink stopage. And I've even seen guys doing long holing down to meter widths, which is close to our average width. But I think for us, just straightforward in the beginning, keep it simple, and go with standard stoping.
Okay.
And there's some reasons for that, right? First of all, if you look at some of the biggest mines in Colombia, you have Silencio, Buritica, Marmato, which are really near to this, are high-grade gold mines. They're also doing it, right? They're using multiple miners. Just watch, actually, Paul Harris's conference was shocked because I think in Silencio they have 5,000 miners.
Wow.
Okay? So, but there's some reasons for that. Obviously, the labor rates in Colombia are completely different than other parts of the world, right? No. You get a lot of people that go, we got to get in there and do mechanization, but you could actually, by mechanizing, make things more expensive, right? Because you have the experience and knowledge on how to mine in this methodology, right? And I've been in Colombia and worked in operating mines, so I know that experience exists. So that is the number one. And number two is, right, we do have the luxury is that almost all of these go to surface or so close to surface, that means that it's fairly easy to access.
Yeah.
We had a really quick discussion. The other advantage we have as silver and a sulfide silver is we don't really see a competition with small miners, right? Most of them are looking for a free gold that they can amalgamate. And amalgamation is literally two metals coming together to make an amalgam, and it's normally mercury, right? So they can't amalgamate the silver sulfide, nor do they want it. Right? So that allows us to be more efficient in the number of mine mouths. So when you look at Buritica, Silencio, Marmato, all these different mines, it was all about developing them and working up the number of working faces. And so that would be a similar approach to us, right? It would be start at a scale and scale it up as you build up. I've seen a lot of other projects fail. I am a mining engineer by background, right? Because they try and go as big as possible, as quick as possible, and then they get into trouble, right? Because they can't feed the mill and cash flow doesn't work out and they have a problem, right?
Yeah.
So the approach that has worked in Colombia is start a project off, build the working faces, more development, keep it going, more people, et cetera, until you can get your production rates up to a reasonable level. And it's very doable. So I am happy that there are projects like Silencio, Buritica, Marmato, and others that demonstrate that this is doable. And those are easily going to be projects. I think even Santa Ana, at its largest potential dreaming size, will not be the 2,000, 3,000 tons per day of these other projects. And they're doing it. So I have confidence we'll be able to do it too.
Yeah, well, it helps you have exceptionally high grade because you don't need to put so much through, right? That does lead on quite nicely actually to the processing route, because rather than going for a very large, like you were saying, a very large concept for a mine, especially on the processing side, you've opted to go a bit smaller to begin with, more of a demonstration plant. But the benefits of that, or at least from what I could tell, was rather than dealing with the federal government to get your permits and go down the environmental route, you're dealing with a local state, Tolima. When we were on site, we managed to meet the mayor of Falan, which couldn't be more grateful and more appreciative of the work that you've been doing, and that genuinely was sincere that I saw there. And the others was the actual state director, the director of the state, Tolima. And again, it's this they were talking about even trying to bring in this more of an innovation hub and silver hub and trying to get Samsung involved and really try and grow a bit more of an economy over there, right? And maybe we could just talk a bit about that, because that's quite huge for you in the fact that you've got so much support already without even submitting any of these permits or applications yet. But you've got so much support in-state, in town, to actually progress and get you guys into production at a faster pace.
So I would like to start with, it wasn't serendipitous.
No.
It was a definite effort on that's the way and the type of company that we wanted to create.
Yeah.
Right. I've been involved in the development of some of the largest projects in the world, and in Ecuador, it was the first industrial scale mine in the history of the country, right? Yeah. And I like looking around and realizing and knowing that is a skill set that most people do not have. When I joined Outcrop, it was because I could see a pathway of how this could become a mine. That is really the purpose that we should be having. We're not here just to drill to discover stuff and be happy with the number of ounces going up and up and up and up, right? Yeah. That is the true purpose of all that capital that we're spending, is that one day it can be converted into an operation, right? So our approach from the beginning, right? I said, I went to Ecuador as a mining engineer, and I left a sociologist, a politician, all these other skills that I realized were more important than just the technical side, right? Yeah. And you don't wait till the end of the line to start building that pathway, right? So we work extremely hard on creating real relationships on the ground, working together. And one of the things I'm most excited about of what you just said was you saw a government and a local community and even the regional departmental government feeling part of this project, right? Because I do say, right, does the community support you is the wrong question, right? Do they feel part of the project is the right question. because support can be fleeting.
Yep.
Right? But this is also their part of it, right? And so that really makes me happy that you got that kind of feedback, because they see themselves part of this project, and that they see the benefit of co-developing it, right? They see a bigger picture than just a little operation, right? They understand that the rarity of an overall silver district, and that they have one of them, right? And that the importance of silver in the world. So yes, we focus first on being as strong as possible locally, and then working it outwards, sort of like an onion. So yes, seeing this pathway of saying we can start at a much smaller size, keep all of the permitting within in-house, because it's always easier to expand a project than it is to try and get a permit for a gymongous project. Because the other thing that happens, and you see it a lot, you got a $2 billion project, you get to the end of the finish line, they ask for some additional works, and then it's going all the way back to the beginning, right? And these costs seem to spiral out of control, right? So we saw this pathway, and the other one would be, let's pretend we do get to that 100 million number we hope to hit, we go into a PEA, we go into a pre-feasibility, we go into a feasibility. That process in its own is 2 to 3 years, right? Minimum. And because at the end of the day, there's going to be a big price tag, and we're going to have to say, I need to raise money based on that price tag. Here's the document to support that, right? But in a smaller operation, you're dealing with numbers that are way more manageable. We literally can see a startup project that's in the $3 million range, which obviously is something that's manageable, more comfortable dealing with just internal documents to get it, internal work to get that done, and it allows you to, I call it the parallel to the larger vision, right? And that's the way we approach projects. We see the opportunity I want it to be what market wants. I'm also thinking, what would a major or a larger commercial want? But I also say we need to have the flexibility that as silver moves, the markets move, that we have different opportunities on how we can create the most value for our shareholders.
Yeah, no, I agree. Look, with the pilot plant, just talk us through what the idea is at the moment, because obviously you're starting off pretty small scale. Was it how many tons per day to start off with?
Currently, the smallest size is about 40 tons per day, which is quite small.
Quite small, but again, high grade sort of helps sort of that.
Yes,
but
does.
At what point, and I think you did tell me on site, and I just wanted to clarify again, what point does it become of a scale where the federal government do need to be involved in the decision-making process? Or as you or is it a point of, as you incrementally increase, you carry on working with the state entirely?
Somebody needs to fact check me.
Okay.
Right? Because I think it is anything under 1,000 tons per day would be considered medium scale mining, and that would maintain regional. Right?
Wow, okay.
There's small scale, which is about the 40 size, right? And then there becomes a medium. Only when it becomes large scale does it all go to the federal government.
Okay.
But there is a little bit more oversight the larger the project becomes, right?
Yeah.
So 40 would definitely be, and one of the reasons we chose it was because we definitely want to be what would be considered small scale, right? Because we also want to demonstrate to everybody what this actually looks like. I have multiple reasons why to start at that size. It's less intimidating. The capital is easier to manage.
Yep.
Remember what we talked about is you got to get up a bunch of working faces to get these things, and the worst thing you can do is overbuild and then not be able to deliver. You get into a working capital problem, etc. Right? But the number one reasons for me is to demonstrate it can be done. Market, can you really mine it like that? We're doing it. Are you really getting that kind of recoveries? We're already doing it. Are you going to be profitable? If I'm profitable at 40 tons per day, then I know I'm going to be profitable at a larger size, right? And then the ability that if, let's say that silver takes off and goes to $200 an ounce, right? We want to be a part of a quick pathway of taking advantage of that, right? Yeah. So there's multiple reasons, but it is not the number one primary strategy of the company. Right now, our value is through our exploration and why it's so important to demonstrate how this district can scale up. Right? So really it's kind of a side strategy, right? More than the primary strategy. But it does add a lot of value to the project if we can get it across the finish line.
No, I agree. Look, I saw the drill rigs turning on site. I know there's going to be loads more drills to come. I think you were also talking about potentially adding a couple more extra drill rigs over next year, and really speed up this process to get into this 100 million ounces, right? I mean, talk to me about, say we're sitting here this time next year, whereabouts you want to be? What's the position you want to be in?
I normally base my decision making based on the reality that I have, right?
Yep.
Of course, if I wasn't an optimist, I wouldn't be working in mining, right? But you still have to base it on the reality we have today.
Yeah.
We know our valuation in market. We know our value per ounce in the ground, right? We know that there's a little bit of add because they know that there's a potential to expand. But this is where we are. I know how much capital cost me today to raise, right? So I want to make sure we are attacking this, and 2 drill rigs makes it fairly efficient where I'm not overly diluting while I'm still creating value. Now that changes, right? If silver goes up and equity markets respond, that is the point where we have the ability to add additional drills and get to those catalysts quicker, right? Independently, what I'd like to be sitting here next year, right, is we've now done sufficient drilling where we're now entering and working on doing an updated resource, right? We want to make sure that when we do our next resource, it's demonstrating a large expansion to the existing. So it doesn't, because, most people don't have the time to really look at you really quick. They say 37, they have a little, maybe they can add 10%. So we want to be able to demonstrate, no, this is what went from 37 to X, right, where it demonstrates, they're taking large steps in their resource, and this thing catches the attention that this thing has the potential to grow, right? It's the curse and the benefit of doing a resource. Doing a resource demonstrates it's real, but then a lot of times market thinks that's done, like it's where you are. So that's a big part of our strategy. And I think the advantage is we can accelerate that process, right? If things go really, really good, maybe we're already looking down the barrel at those internal targets we want to do in a very short period of time. But either way, I know we can demonstrate a significant expanse in the resource.
Good. A final thing from me was, I think you did 40,000 meters on the first resource. That was based on 7 veins, was it? Something
That's correct.
Around then. You're now on 14 veins. You're on 75,000 odd meters. That's what the guys on site were telling us. I think people, even just with that information alone,
can see where we're going.
See where you're going. Yeah.
That I'm hitting my objectives that we started out at the beginning of the year with.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly what we wanted to do at the beginning of the year, right? Yeah. Demonstrate a pathway. So now the nice part is every single new target we hit, we're adding to that database, and it only provides us with more efficiency on how to create that additional resource. Not hit it, drill it out, hit it, drill it out. We now say, okay, where can we add the most amount of ounces for the least amount of money?
Yeah.
Right? Sorry, it's the engineer in me, but that's the way I like to approach. But it's also my sweet spot, right? Yeah. I'm a post-resource guy, getting things into development and getting things across the finish line. Amazing work by Joe, who was the original CEO and the guy who discovered this project, came up with the methodology, did enough drilling to come up with the indicated resource to get the geostatistics down, that now make it more, unfortunately, a little bit more regimented in the way of how we're going to develop the rest out.
Yeah, no, it's just modern exploration approach, right? It's no longer just drill anywhere and waste all the money. It's actually targeted. I loved it. Thank you so much for having us on site. Thank you again for coming here and joining us.
I'm glad you enjoyed your trip to Colombia. And I also tell the little secret. Colombia obviously isn't like your series on Netflix that most people are used to seeing. It's completely different than it is today. But I like keeping it a little bit of a secret, right? So it doesn't get flooded with tourists.
No, look, I would 100%. I even said back to my friends as soon as I got home, I said, forget everything you know about Colombia, get out there.
I know. Yeah. We need to stop that.
Yeah.
So all the tourists are not going to be coming to Colombia.
But Ian, thank you.
You too. Thanks.
Cheers.